What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Quadcast, the show where we get real, get raw, and get loud about mental health, substance use, and the fight to take our lives back.
Each episode, we're cutting through the stigma, dropping knowledge, sharing stories, and bringing the heat with guests who have lived it and aren't afraid to talk about it.
So turn it up, lock in, and let's break barriers, spark change, and build a community that refuses to stay silent. You're tuned into the Quadcast, and let's get into it.
You can find us on Patreon, Facebook, Instagram, or email us. The Quadcast is always looking for new guests, whether you're individuals that have experienced it, you're in law enforcement, treatment programs, nurses, doctors, or anyone that just has something to say. Come share your story with us on mental health or substance abuse.
Warning, there's cussing in this video. If you don't like swear words, well, you're
watching the wrong damn show.
All right, so we're going to kind of channel over to more like what a forensic nurse does.
Okay.
Like in relation with law enforcement.
Okay.
So how do forensic nurses and law enforcement work together on cases?
The biggest thing is we collect the evidence for law enforcement. So like I said, with sexual assaults, no law enforcement is going to do a public exam or do a physical exam on them to check that they're medically okay and then collect the evidence. Like they can do certain evidence, like photographs, but our photographs are a little bit more detailed on the sexual assault side. So we unfortunately get down into the basis of everything. Like we get them into a hospital gown and we check them over head to toe. And so we have the evidence and then pass it over to law enforcement.
So basically law enforcement in the beginning is basically the reporter. They're bringing you that. You do the investigation and then turn over the evidence.
I wouldn't say the investigation, because that is
like the investigative evidence collection.
Yeah, we do the evidence, and then anything that we're told, we pass it along to law enforcement as long as the patient's okay. Because sometimes we can collect the evidence and the patient's like, I don't want to cooperate with law enforcement yet, so they have the option to do the evidence but not turn it over to law enforcement.
Now, on like a rape kit, do you guys send that to like a law enforcement lab? Like, does law enforcement obtain those and then send those off, or do you guys send those off?
So we have one of two ways in my department. We have what's called a blind perk, which means we collect all the evidence and everything that can fit in the box goes in the box.
Right.
So we're limited as to what we can collect. We can't collect like all the clothes and everything like that. And then we send that to our state lab over in Richmond. Okay. The other option is if they're cooperating with law enforcement, we collect all the evidence and then sign the chain of custody directly over to a law enforcement officer.
What is the most chosen route?
Honestly, I think it's 50-50.
Really?
Because like I said, around my area, we have two colleges. So a lot of these kids come in, and I call them kids because they haven't experienced life yet.
Sure.
And they're younger than me, but they don't know what they want to do. They don't want to tell mom and dad that something's happened because they're afraid mom and dad's going to pull them from college and bring them back home. They're afraid nobody's going to believe them. They're going to afraid that because they were drinking, they asked for it. And they don't, or the fact that they don't trust law enforcement yet. So we don't give anything out, information, evidence, anything, unless this patient has decided, yep, I'm going to cooperate. So along with that is we don't attach their box, their kit to any name until they're ready. So we give them the information to say, if and when you want to report, here's the information. You'll have to have law enforcement have the box pulled, blah, 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 but you don't have to do anything until you're ready to do it. So we do the evidence and we ship it off to the state lab, or we do the evidence and we sign it over to a road officer or the investigator if they're there.
Sure. Well, you answered all those.
Sorry.
That's okay. I like it like that. what steps are taken to ensure evidence is collected and handled properly from your aspect?
I mean, it starts with the education of when we're precepted, what we need to do, how we do it. I see that's hard. It's just the way we collect everything. It doesn't leave our side once it's open. We collect what we need to. We do it properly by our protocol. And then, like I said, it doesn't leave our side until it's sealed. And then, for me, I keep it with me even after it's sealed for chain of custody purposes, whether it goes straight to law enforcement or they're going to ship it. And if it gets shipped off, we sign chain of custody to a double lock system. So our cabinet and our room, everything is locked down. And we just document. If we didn't do it, it wasn't. If it's not documented, we didn't do it. So I document everything.
You got that one too.
Sorry.
It's okay. It was just how important is documentation in the cases that may go to court?
Oh, everything. Especially a lot of these cases are not seen in court until 2 and 3 years later. Sure. And I'm not going to remember something if it's not documented.
Absolutely. It's hard. I mean, even, from a law enforcement perspective, documentation is everything, because court gets drug out so much and put off, and then it ends up you go to court and then you end up having to go to grand jury, or you have to get your grand jury report. So documentation is everything, and a lot of people don't understand that.
If it's not documented, it wasn't done. You can't prove it.
Absolutely. How do you communicate findings to law enforcement in a clear and neutral way?
I tell them my physical findings, and then I tell them it's consistent with the individual story. And then at that point, I'm a fact witness. I don't give my opinion much, if at all, at that point. And then when I go to court, it's, have they qualified me an expert witness? Can I tell the court, yes, this is what I've seen before and it's consistent, or this is what I was told and it's consistent with the story?
Sure.
So I can't really give my opinions, and I try not my best to give the opinions even to law enforcement. I leave it up to the lab and law enforcement to find the truth. It's not my job to find the truth.
So what challenges can arise in communication between healthcare and law enforcement?
It's just like the patient, they want to know for sure what has happened and if something has happened and how it happened. And I can't do that. I collect the evidence and I tell them, like I said, it's consistent with the story, or here's what I've seen before. Or like if we find like a pattern injury, I can say, I don't know what that pattern is, but here's what it looks like. So I can't say one way or the other.
That makes sense. What helps build mutual respect and trust between forensic nurses and officers?
Just the way we respect each other's position when we do this. They respect that I can't say one way or the other. And I respect that they don't tell me how to do my job. They're going to say, I want to collect this. Okay, well, I can't do that unless it's up to the patient.
Right.
So we just respect each other's position and roles.
So in your exam, the patient pretty much says yay or nay to what you can and can't do.
Absolutely. I give them back what they have had taken from them. Like I said, if they don't want me, they have to sign a release of information. If they don't sign it, I can't talk to the prosecutor or defense attorney. I can't talk to anyone at this point. So it's completely up to them.
That just brings a whole different level of problems, just because of them being in that emotional state and have been mentally abused over such a period of time that they don't want to get that person in trouble.
And that's it. A lot of people are like, I don't want to ruin their lives, or and it's, I advocate for my patient. I say, well, you're not ruining it. You're we're just doing what's best for you. And if any point they decide they want to move along later, other people have the release of information to allow me to talk.
Sure.
Or if they want the medical records, they can pull a subpoena for it. It all depends. But a lot of that is the education that we provide up front. So when we call it informed consent. So when they sign this is what they're signing for. Or they sign a refusal, they have to be fully understanding what they're signing, whether it's consent or a refusal.
Sure.
And if it's something like evidence, then I tell them, here's your time frame. If they don't want to do it, you can come back during this time frame at any point. And
what is the time frame?
So it all depends. So for strangulation and any physical touch DNA, I think is 48 hours. And then depending on sexual assaults, depending on the type of assault, it's anywhere from 24 hours up to 120 hours, which is 5 days from the time of the assault.
I wasn't sure on those.
Those are our standards. I'm assuming it's across the board, but
why would they make it simple?
Exactly.
Do forensic nurses and law enforcement receive joint training, or should they?
I honestly don't think there should be joint training. I think there should be education on both aspects, like what law enforcement does on scene and what forensics nurses prefer and want on scene of law enforcement, and then vice versa. What law enforcement, whether it's a road officer or the investigator, will want from forensics. And then that way it better understands our roles. I don't think there's any joint training per se. I know in my area they do what we call an MDT, a multidisciplinary team. So you bring law enforcement, forensics, prosecutors, the advocacy centers around our area, everybody to discuss certain cases and what went wrong, what went right, what we can do better in the future. So that way everybody's all on the same page. But the training, I don't think should be joint because our positions are two totally different things.
No, I agree with that. I mean, you have a job to do, they have a job to do. It's two totally different things, but you have to know what the other's doing in order to perform the job correctly.
Yep.
So with that, what do you wish law enforcement better understood about forensic role?
Oh, there's so many. The few that I'm going to touch on is if it's a road officer, minimal questions. Like, don't relive this. Like, get what you need to for the scene, whether you need to preserve evidence on scene or put out information on an individual. And then for also understand our side of it. Like if they don't want to cooperate, then I can't force them. I'm just here as a mutual party to collect the evidence, but also minimize the transfer of evidence, whether it's touching the patient or having them change clothes or letting them drink or things that could destroy our evidence.
Sure. What do you think healthcare professionals should understand about the law enforcement's role in it?
So this one's kind of easy for me because my husband is law enforcement and we have not discussed specific patients, but we discuss cases or scenarios, not cases.
Yep.
I think is to they need to understand the preservation of our evidence because like I said, these are low frequency, high acuity calls. So the road officers don't understand that this patient doesn't need to bathe or drink or eat. You need to minimize contamination of evidence. Allow that our role is based off the patient and their choices versus forcing them and twisting their arm to do something.
Sure. I
can't force it. It's up to them. If they want to proceed with legal and do evidence and everything, the whole 9 yards, and that's completely up to them. But if they're nope, I just want to make sure I'm medically okay, well, okay, then I'll put you back in the ER. And that's mine is to make sure you're medically okay and do evidence collection. Law enforcement need to understand that We are patient-based, not like scene-based perpetrator.
Sure. What misconceptions exist about forensic evidence and testimony?
The misconceptions is they think we're one-sided. They think we're always for the prosecution. We are not. Like I said before, we are either defense or prosecution. It's up to whoever calls us. And then we're independent. So we give the facts, and if whoever calls us wants to certify us as an expert witness in forensics, then we can give our opinions. But if like the defense calls us and the prosecution, they're more than welcome to not use us at all, because somebody doesn't want to hurt one case or one side or the other. Excuse me. So it just all depends. Like I'm not like law enforcement, like for one side. Very independent in the middle.
What are some challenges of working within both healthcare and legal systems?
That one is, how do I put it? The challenge is you want justice for this patient, but that's not your job.
Sure.
You want this patient to understand that it's not their fault. They didn't ask for this. They're not in the wrong. So you want them, for your own personal reasons, I guess that's not the right way to put it, for justice for the patient, you want them to do everything, push the whole like 9 yards in legal. You want them to get the justice they deserve, but
right.
You are not there for justice. You're there for the patient, evidence, making sure they're okay, giving them the resources they need past the hospital.
Sure.
So I think that's the hardest part. And then when you don't get a conviction, you take it to heart. And that's very hard because you've done everything you can. This patient has decided to push everything. You give all what you feel are the right answers, but it lies in the other hands, whether it's the jury or the judge, and they, one way or the other, say, nope, there's no justice. You feel like you let the patient down because you're more than one piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
But you feel like you're an important piece, and you do the best for your patient because you're the patient advocate, and you take it to heart when they don't get the conviction that they wanted.
Sure. You're very close to it, the whole process, especially when you have to go through the whole court proceedings and everything.
Yeah, and that's hard. Is you have to remember that you have to remove yourself from the emotional aspect of it.
Sure. What advice would you give new forensic nurses about working with law enforcement?
Stand your ground. Don't let them bully you into one way or the other.
Bullies.
Yeah. So, like, you know what your role is and what your aspect is. You just give them the evidence, and then if the patient has signed release, you talk to them, but don't give your opinions yet until it's called to court and you're qualified. You're mutual, you're independent, and you're factual at the time.
So, have you ever had to testify in court, and what was the experience like?
I've been a handful of times, and each experience was different. Some experiences are you feel like you're being attacked, whether which side you're on. Other times you feel very lost based on the questions, and you don't remember the problem is you don't remember everything that happened 2-3 years ago.
My favorite word is I don't recall.
Yes. And then they give you time to review your chart, but then you feel very flustered.
Sure. You're put on the spot.
Am I allowed to say that? What am I allowed to say? And then as soon as somebody objects, you have to stop right there. You can't finish your sentence. So like I said previously, each case is not the same. It's not cookie cutters. So again, with court, you take it how you get it. Can you give your opinion? Are you qualified? Or can you just give your facts? So it all depends on the case.
Yeah, that would be even worse than from a law enforcement perspective.
And I've discussed like the situation with my husband, and he's always like, well, I've been doing this for 13 years. I'm like, yeah, you go once a month. I go once a year. It's not the same.
And most of the time it's pretty cut and dry on our side.
Yes, and it's not for us. And then a lot of times you don't get the final result, and it's hard. Like, did your testimony help? Did it hurt? Did you get the justice you needed? Like, and a lot of times it's hard. We don't get the follow-up, whether they don't go to court or after court, what's the sentence or anything like that.
Right. So how do you prepare for legal proceedings related to your cases?
The best thing that we can do is reach out to, whether it's the Commonwealth, the prosecution that we're working with, or the defense, and discuss the case and what kind of questions they want. Not the answers, just the questions that they're going to ask. And then I do review, like when I'm in the office, I don't print it out, but I review my chart, sort of like less than a week before. Okay, here's where I saw this patient. What did I find? What did the patient say? How was it interpreted? Things like that. So it's just reviewing with whoever calls you and then reviewing the chart.
What kinds of questions are you mostly asked on the stand? Like,
the biggest is my background. So am I qualified for what I'm testifying to? So what is a forensics? What do they do? The qualifications to be a forensics, the training that goes into it.
It sounds like I've just taken you to court today.
Yeah, that's okay. It gets a lot more in depth in court. They ask a lot more like specific questions. And then it gets into the case. Okay, do you recall seeing this patient? Do you recall being at work at this time? Do you recall what the patient said? What about these injuries? How do you interpret them? What are they like? Where did you find them? Different things like that. And that's the basis of it, whether it's facts or the interpretation and your thoughts on it is when you get into the expert testimony.
Okay. What is cross-examination like from your perspective?
It always frightens me because I'm afraid that I'm going to say the wrong thing for the prosecution. Like if the prosecution calls me, then I want my best to be independent, but I want justice for this patient. So if the prosecution calls me, I'm afraid the defense is going to like find a hole in my story or my testimony, and then that's going to allow the patient to, or not the patient, the perpetrator to get away with what has happened. I will tell you, every case I've had has always been prosecution calling me and not the defense. I've had a defense attorney call me, but we have not made that to court yet.
Gotcha.
So I don't know how it is to play for the defense side yet.
Sure.
But I'm always afraid I'm going to say the wrong thing.
So in your schooling training, do you get to experience the court setting at all before you are a forensic nurse?
The most that we get to do is we get to go into court and watch court cases.
Okay.
I, in my training, have never watched a forensic expert, like testify as an expert witness. I have watched a forensic nurse testify, but it was more on the medical side and not like the forensic aspect. That's part of our training is to watch court cases. You have to have so many hours of court cases, and preferably watching a expert testimony of a forensic nurse. But as little as we go to court, that is very hard. If I would have had to wait for all the forensics experts to testify, I'd probably still be on probationary status right now.
Sure. How do you stay calm and confident when your work is questioned?
Stick to the facts that I can remember, or it's in my notes that I can recall. One of the first court cases I ever got testified or got called to testify in was, when you're answering questions, don't look at the attorney that's asking them. Sure. When they're asking them, you can look at them, but then direct your answers to the judge or jury. and don't look anybody like right in the eye. So that way they don't like try to intimidate you or anything like that. Make sure you maintain your cool. And that's the best thing is don't feed into what's happening.
Sure. What are some common misunderstandings attorneys or juries have about forensic evidence?
I don't know about attorneys because I haven't spoken to them, but the juries, I think, are back to the lay terms of they expect you to be able to say, yes, something definite happened and here's what happened. Unless I'm a fly on the wall and saw it, I can't explain. I can just give you what I found and what was told to me.
Right.
I'm just another piece of the puzzle. So you have to hear all the testimony and put all the pieces together, whether you decide this individual needs to be convicted or not.
Sure. How does court involvement affect patients even if they aren't present?
The fact that I think the biggest thing is, are they going to get justice for what happened to them? And is the individual, if they get away with it, going to retaliate?
Sure.
They're afraid that they're going to come back on them for putting them through all of this and getting away with it. Or is somebody going to send, which is more like movies, but I've heard it before, is somebody going to send somebody else after them to hurt them even further because they're now in jail for this?
Sure. So how do you prepare patients for the possibility of that, of court involvement?
I explained that everything that we can collect, whether it's photographs or evidence, is allowed in court. Photographs are a big thing. They may not be shown directly to the entire courtroom, but they can be shown to the jury later on. So 12, 13 people, how many ever it is, can see these photographs. That's just the jury, but you also have both the judge and the attorneys.
Right.
And I explained that unfortunately there's nothing off limits in court.
No.
But that's as far as I go because I try not to speak to the other aspects of like what law enforcement does, what they're going to ask,
Sure.
what legal like what happens next. I tell them based off my prior experience, this is what can happen or what has happened in my experience. But I also explain that I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about this right now. Here's what we need to do in order to get to that if that's what you decide to do.
Sure. What advice do you have for nurses about charting with court in mind?
Be professional. You know how to be professional. They can pull anything of the medical records. If you write it down, then be professional. If you didn't write it down, it didn't happen. So don't use like, say the patient, blah, blah, blah. I don't believe them, things like that. Like I've never seen it, but that's not something we want to put down. It's open to court and you can be called. So
Sure.
Just be professional. And then if you can't, how do you explain it later on down the road?
What advice would you give a forensic nurse who may testify for the first time?
Be calm. Try to remember what questions that the attorney has asked. Give as little, like answer the question. Don't give too much. If they want you to elaborate, they will. If they want you to word it a different way, they will. But just kind of pay attention to the attorney that called you. If they want a certain question answered a certain way, they will continuously to ask you. But you have to be unbiased.
Sure.
So you have to remember what you're there for.
Well, I think I'm done taking you to court now.
That's okay. It's been a while since I've been.
Yeah, it never hurts. So I'll touch on some substance use and stuff like that for a minute. How often does substance use come up in a forensic nursing situation? or
all
case?
the time. We ask, if it's a child case, we ask if there's any substance use in the home. If it's an adult case, we ask, when's the last time, and we're not here to judge. I always tell them, we're not here to judge. It's based off any evidence I can find or medications I give you, because some medications interact with alcohol.
Sure.
So when's the last time you did anything recreational? When's the last time you drank? We ask kids, like the caregiver, are there substance use in the house? Anybody in the family have a history of substance use? We ask, because if something comes up in their system and they're like, nope, I've never used it, okay, here's a red flag.
Right.
Substance use there's a higher risk for violence, whether it's child abuse, domestic, sexual. Medications that we give interact with alcohol, so we try not to give those until their system has been clear of alcohol for so many hours. And then in domestics, when we do the danger assessment, if the partner has a history of substance use, currently using past history, that gives them a higher score on danger assessment when we score it. So that's also part of the little tool in the toolbox that we give them. Like, if they continue to use, you're going to have a higher history, like higher chance of it.
Sure. How do you assess patients who may be under the influence while still prioritizing their safety and dignity?
How impaired is their cognitive? Are they like super drunk that they can't keep their eyes open? Are they super high? They don't know what's going on. You have to assess all of these things so that way they're properly taken care of. Like, do they understand what's going on? Can they physically sign for things? Because their cognitive ability is not impaired.
Sure.
So it just, like, that's one of the things we, especially with college kids, it's around the area, it's hard. Like, can they legally understand what's going on?
So with that, how does substance use affect consent in the forensic case?
Oh, it affects everything. As long as, if they're able to be alert and oriented and answer my questions appropriately that we ask, then they can consent. If they're able to answer those questions, but then later on they're like, wait, what a minute, what's going on? I'm not touching this patient until they can fully understand what's going on.
Right.
Because if they're seeing me under the influence of alcohol or drugs, and then somebody has already done something to them, that means they don't understand and they've already been violated. I'm not doing that. I'm there to take care of the patient and make sure they're okay. We try to leave them in the hospital for them to sober up one way or the other, and then we will come back and see them. But as long as they're able to completely understand what's going on, then we'll see them. But if they can't, then I'm not doing anything until that patient is okay to actually understand what's going on.
Sure. How can substance use impact evidence collection or legal cases outside of the consent area?
Well, if they have a history, like I said earlier, if there's something in their system and they're like, nope, I didn't do that, I don't know what's going on, I have no idea about that, then okay, well, maybe they were drugged of some sort. The roofinols is a big thing that we see with, like, being roofie. They don't remember anything that's going on. They have all these signs and symptoms of being drugged. Well, okay, then we can do their blood work or their urine and collect it and pass it along and say, okay, yep, something happened. So they didn't have consent to say, yes, have consensual intercourse or like something like that. They were impaired some way or another.
So are there common misconceptions about substance use and credibility?
I think so. I think that a lot of people believe that just because this individual is partaking in drinking, that they were like college kids are a big one, not just around my area, but across the board. They get to drinking and then they get to having fun, and then either it's too much alcohol or something happens and they were like, oh, well, she was drinking, she asked for it, or he was drinking and it's okay. Like, that's just what happens with alcohol. And it's like, no, I drink and I don't ask for stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, that's not how this happens. Or she was drinking and she was wearing something too revealing. It's okay. Like, she totally asked for it. No, that's not how this works. Or recreational drugs. You get people that participate in recreational drugs and then get a little bit too much or something happens and they're like, it's okay. She totally said yes. Well, who else is there to back up your story and say, yeah, that was fine, but it comes down to the bottom line of impairment of the cognitive ability to consent.
That makes sense. How do past trauma and substance use often influence each other within these cases?
A lot of people don't have the healthy coping mechanisms. So if people have access to it, that's how they cope. And then it becomes a huge problem because that's the only way they know how to cope is they need to get high or they need to drink. They need to black out from their sorrows. They need to avoid it.
Sure.
So whether they're doing recreational drugs or the alcohol, that's their way to repress their brain in the memories of what had happened.
Sure. So how do you tailor care for patients with known history of substance use?
The biggest thing I would say is the medications. As long as they're able to consent and wherewithal of what's going on and what's happening, just because they have a history of substance abuse doesn't mean we're going to treat them any differently.
Right.
Difference is when we give them medications, are they going to be able to comply with the medication regimen? Right. So are they, like, if we give one medication and they continuously drink, they're going to be violently sick. So it's really not going to help the medication.
Sure.
One medication interact with recreational drugs. Are they going to be able to stay off of it long enough to do their medications? And medications we provide are a wide range of things. So if they, openly say, no, I'm not going to be able to stay away from this. Okay, well, what's the pros and cons of giving you the medication? Do you want to do the drugs and the alcohol, or do you want to prevent X, Y, and Z with the medications?
Right.
So it's up to them. It's based, I think the biggest thing is all off of medication regimen.
It would, do more people, do you see, choose not to do the medication regimen and stick on the substance and alcohol scale?
Personally, I don't think I've seen big substance use. I mean, I have seen histories and then doing the medications, but I think individuals are more worried about X, Y, and Z that the medications can help versus the substance.
Sure.
Like I said, the biggest thing is college students. I tell them when they consent to certain medications, I tell them you have to stay off the alcohol for this long in order to do the medications.
Sure.
And they're mostly okay. And I tell them, you're going to be violently sick if you do it. And they're like, okay. And at that point, you've educated them, you've given them all the tools. It's up to them to decide what they want to do because they're legally adults. They can do it.
How can healthcare and community systems do better in addressing substance-related trauma?
I think with the stigma that just because there's substance involved doesn't mean that they asked for it or they consented to it.
Sure.
You have to break that stigma. Just because you're out doing this and having fun or doing something for yourself doesn't mean that you asked for it. It's like wearing short shorts. Okay, well, Maybe they're comfortable instead of wearing like whatever or something else. Like they didn't ask for it. I'm not walking down the street wearing short shorts asking for it, and I'm a mom. They're just more comfortable than other shorts.
Right.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of the Quadcast.
Remember, breaking stigma doesn't stop when the episode ends. We're building a movement, and you're a part of it. Stay strong, stay aware, and stay connected.
And this is the Quadcast signing out.